Out for fragments of silicon when found near springs.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the Daylight Interviews. Joining us this week is Alpha Chrome Yayo.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes well. How about you?
Hey, I'm all good. Yeah, I mean, it's the end of the week. It's been a busy week, so I'm kind of ready for some nice weekend activity.
Understandable. Right, so how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind usually the games, the studio. This is a bit different since you're a freelancer and you're a music composer. We've
That
had
is correct.
music composers on the program before. Um, so the journey should be pretty similar to our usual game dev fare. But we start at the same place, and that is, how did you get interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Sure. I mean, I guess it's always been a huge part of my life. I mean, some of my very earliest memories are playing, well, my very earliest memories include playing on the ZX Spectrum, an ancient crumbling computer that we had in the house that ran off cassette tapes, which I do kind of love, but it was really playing the Sega Mega Drive or the Sega Genesis for US friends, where, that everything just exploded for me and I
I was just
completely
about to
fell
make
in
a
love.
joke of European spotted.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Yeah, so I mean that was the start of everything for me. But and since then, games have been a huge part
Okay.
of my life, and so has
And
music.
it seems to have continued on through the ages, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, I've
At
never
what
not
point
been a
did you say to yourself, I can do this professionally? I can work in video games.
well, it was something that I always wanted to do. I mean, I always wanted to work in music in particular, and I've always wanted to work in games. So the idea of combining those two things just seemed natural. And I studied music in school, and I kept playing games and learning more about them. Um, but for a while, it seemed like something that was kind of meant for other people, but that was stupid. I mean, it's meant for people who can do it. So, I went off and did different things. I studied film. I worked in film for a bit. I worked in radio for a long time. But then I started kind of self-releasing my own music, my own albums. But what I still wanted to do was make music for games. And that's what I've been doing now, full time. I've been doing it for a few years now, for about 5 or 6 years, but I've been doing it full time for a couple of years now. And it's great. I love it. It's what I've always wanted to do, and it's where I feel most at home.
That's good. That's good to hear. Um, and what was the push? What was the
Oh, I think I kind of lost you a bit there. What was
Yeah,
the push that kind of sent me over the edge into doing it for a job? Is that the
yeah,
gist? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, as I say, I've been doing it sort of. I work freelance full time. I've been doing some game work and composition for other things like YouTube channels, a bit of radio, a bit of TV. The thing that tipped me over the edge was playing a game that I worked on, which I'm sure we'll talk about more about, which is Promise Mascot Agency. Without giving away a massive spoiler, there's a big crescendo towards the end, and playing that makes me feel so confident. It makes me feel like I could punch a hole in time and space. And it was when we were, still making the game, and I played through that scene for the first time. I just thought, I want to do this forever. I don't want to bullshit around with other stuff anymore. I mean, I was turning down composition work to do a kind of day job that I really didn't want to be doing anymore. So I just thought, you know what? Now is the time to try it. I want to be a person who takes risks and takes chances. I've got a young kid. I want to do things that will make my kid proud. So I jacked in the day job, and I've been doing it for a full time for a couple of years now, but about a year and a half, deep at this point.
Okay. And what was the first game you worked on?
First game I worked on was Promise Mascot Agency, which came out. It came out a year ago today, actually. Funnily enough, but the lead up to it was quite a while ago. So it was about 5 years ago I started working on that, and finished it a few years. I finished it shortly before it came out, obviously. Since then, I've been working on a heap of other stuff, most of which I can't really talk about because I'm shrouded in NDAs, but I can talk a bit about some things. But yeah, Promise Mascot Agency was the thing that kind of kicked it all off for me.
And how did Kaizen find you?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I was a huge fan of their previous game, Paradise Killer, which also rules so much. It's such a good game with a killer soundtrack as well. We were both on Twitter at this point. I don't think, I'm not really on Twitter anymore. I'm more on Blue Sky if anybody's looking for me. And I was posting on Twitter about how much I loved Paradise Killer and how much I loved the soundtrack. And I think I recorded like a small cover of one of the tracks in the games. I posted it online. Kaizen saw it. They followed me. We got talking. They liked the music that I was releasing myself on Bandcamp. And after a while of building up a bit of a friendship and a professional relationship, they got in touch and said, "Hey, we're working on this cool thing. We would love you to be the lead composer on it," which was great. They told me about this game, which was, set in a rural, crumbling Japanese town with a Yakuza crime story and weird sentient mascots, and they wanted it to sound kind of 80s Japanese jazz fusion-ish with, some traditional Japanese instruments, stuff that I really love, and stuff that I was just doing for fun anyway at that point. So yeah, I could not say yes quick enough, and that's how it started.
It sounds like in terms of other professional work and amateur work at that.
Oh, sorry, I'm
We
losing you there.
lost a bit of that too. We apologize for this. Adam's internet has been having problems for the last month or so.
Hey, I can relate. I live kind of out in the middle of nowhere almost, and my internet is kind of crappy as well.
All right. As I was saying, it sounds like sorry, Lemmy today. Getting over a cold. Anyway, as I was saying, it sounds like they were having you do what you were working on professionally beforehand.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of overlap. Yeah.
Yeah. Did they add any new twists to the mix here, so to speak?
Yeah,
Creatively.
absolutely. I mean, working on a game it's naturally going to be different than self-releasing albums, which is what I'd mostly done at that point. As I say, I'd done some composition stuff for radio and film. Games can be a bit different because, well, it depends on the game, but obviously they can be more dynamic. I was quite lucky to do Promise Mascot Agency for my first game because it was structured more similarly to how an album would be. They wanted it to sound like an album because most of the music plays in a Japanese K truck that you're driving around, and it's kind of on the radio in the game. But there were other tracks in the game that weren't designed like that. They were meant to be part of the world or themes for characters and stuff, which was a bit different to what I was used to. But then again, I've been playing games for a long time. We all have. We know how games work, and we know how sound in games work, so it wasn't that much of a jump. In terms of the audio itself, yeah, a lot of it was kind of influenced by Japanese jazz fusion, which is a huge thing for me. But twists and turns came up along the way. At one point, they said, "Hey, you know what? A death metal track would be awesome here." And I love death metal as well. I don't think they knew that, but I hadn't listened to a lot of death metal in quite a while. But it was great getting to spend a couple of days screaming in my home studio and probably annoying my neighbors and stuff. So yeah, there were surprises, but very welcome surprises.
Sounds like it. I suppose it's worth asking to go deeper. What is Japanese jazz fusion? What's that sound like?
It's a bit of a mixed bag because a lot of Japanese jazz fusion folds in influences from all over the place. I mean, you will get lots of Western jazz influences within Japanese jazz fusion. I mean, jazz has always been really big in Japan. There was a big post-war jazz boom, and Japan is filled with what are called jazz kisa, which are effectively kind of like jazz cafes where you can go in, get a coffee, get a beer, get a whiskey, and sit usually very quietly and listen to records really loudly. Some of that will be Western jazz, and some of it will be Japanese jazz. So there's lots of kind of overlap, but a large amount of influence comes from like Japanese pop and disco and stuff like that. A lot of the jazz fusion will be kind of danceable in a way that a lot of jazz really is not danceable. So a lot of these records will be kind of groovy, kind of disco-y, lots of kind of melancholia and romantic lyrics and stuff. Things like that tend to set it apart a little bit from what we would usually consider to be Western jazz. But one of the reasons I do like it is that it pulls influence in from lots of different places, and that's something I've always been really interested in, is taking a genre and kind of twisting it a bit and making it your own and seeing how far you can push it, and pulling in all these different sources from all sorts of places, whether it's disco, whether it's Western jazz, whether it's traditional Japanese music like minyo or karaoke, which is kind of an older form of J-pop and stuff. So it folds in a lot of things, so you can kind of almost make it what you want it to be. I mean, some Japanese jazz fusion, the likes of Masayoshi Takanaka, he's a guitarist primarily, and it'll be very guitar driven, lots of crazy wild jazz solos and stuff. Whereas you could take an artist like Tatsuya Masuda, who's another Japanese jazz fusion legend. He will lean more on kind of rich composition stuff and bring in lots of guest musicians, lots of guest vocalists and things like that. So there's a whole world to discover, and it's a world that's very malleable and can mean a lot of different things to different people, which is great for me because it means I can kind of do what I want with it when I'm using those influences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if you will, that is kind of the soul of jazz. Not to make any puns or anything, but jazz in general is well known for being very improvisational, very spontaneous, etc., etc., etc.
Sure, absolutely, and it absolutely is, and sometimes that runs counterpoint to kind of making something in a game where it has to be kind of tightly considered in terms of timing, duration, in terms of what's happening in the game and stuff. So that's a bit of a hurdle to overcome sometimes. But it's not impossible. You can inject a bit of live feeling into music when you're recording it. If I'm recording something that's in a jazz kind of world, I'm not going to do a million takes and strive for kind of highly, quantized, perfect timing and everything. You want maybe just a little bit of looseness going on. Maybe a mistake might creep in there, which actually doesn't really. It might sound better. A welcome mistake. And yeah, welcome mistakes or something like kind of welcome in life in general. I think I don't know if that's
Happy
the jazz
little
fan in me
accidents, as
talking.
Mr. Rogers would have put it.
Absolutely, could not put it better myself.
Or Bob
Yeah.
Ross, rather.
Bob Ross, yeah.
Yeah.
But a similar kind of guy.
Yeah. Same network.
Yeah. And where did you pick up this love of Japanese jazz fusion?
I don't really know. I mean, I mentioned briefly that when I was growing up, I listened to a lot of metal and stuff. I played a lot of guitar when I was a teenager, and I think maybe that was part of it because, as I say, some of that kind of the Japanese jazz fusion skews towards kind of wild guitar solos and stuff like that. That might have been the entry point for me. I'm not totally sure. Plus, I play a lot of Japanese games. It's something like the Persona games, for instance, they have that kind of disco-y, almost acid jazz kind of soundtrack. There's definitely a bit of jazz fusion flavor in games like that. I've always been a huge fan of the Yakuza Like a Dragon games, and while they skew a bit more towards kind of well, there's the in-game music, the fight music, but there's also karaoke tracks in those games. For the most part, they're a bit more disco-ish, but again, it's of that kind of world where there's lots of kind of overlap and influences bleeding into each other. So it was probably only natural that I would kind of gravitate towards exploring jazz fusion as a genre. I'm a big record guy as well. I've got a large record collection. So I like going down weird rabbit holes and finding what sticks, and that's true of any kind of musical genre. I like doing deep dives, whether it's into metal or jazz or hip hop or whatever. I feel like there's something very enjoyable about picking a world and just getting lost in it for a short time or a long time.
Makes sense. Whatever, how do I put this? That is the approach for some, not all. But I am a bit vexed at how you get from metal to jazz fusion. Like,
Well, you know what? There is one band I can give it as an example.
Hey,
There's
they
an
both do a lot of
avant-garde.
unconventional tempo stuff.
That's very true. A lot of unusual tempo stuff, a lot of maybe unusual sort of key changes and things like that. There's a Japanese band called Sigh, S-I-G-H, and they're ostensibly kind of an avant-garde metal band. And I caught them live a couple of years ago, last year, a couple of years ago. They're a great live act. That's a band who are very metal. I mean, right down to the corpse paint and everything. But they have sort of disco breaks and jazz breaks within their tracks, and that it'll swing. The genre will swing wildly, not even from track to track, but within each track, it could be very funky one minute, and it could be, like banshee screeches the next second. And again, that I really like that. I like seeing how far you can push genres and mangle them together.
In terms of video game music, did you ever get into the Froland brothers?
Oh, I don't think so. But I love new people to get into, so I'm gonna check them out. Should I?
Oh, that's surprising. Like, you're in for a treat.
Oh, I love a
Because
treat.
the Froland brothers, they kind of did what they did very loose European interpretations of Japanese music. Like,
Oh,
they did a lot
right.
of Commodore 64 stuff. They're the ones who did the Plock soundtrack.
Oh, cool. Right. Okay. Yeah, I love the Plock soundtrack. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah,
That's something I haven't listened to in a long time.
Yeah,
Oh, Tim
Anticipation.
Fallon, of course. I thought you said Frolin. Sorry, Tim
Yeah,
Fallon, of course. There we go.
Fallen.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, a total legend. Somebody who I haven't listened to a lot, but I have listened to the Plock soundtrack an awful lot. That's something I deeply enjoy.
Figured as much. Just I think of things like the Commodore 64 version of Bionic Commando.
Yeah.
Which is you compare the very ordered march of the NES/arcade version versus whatever's going on in the Commodore 64 version.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there are some amazing soundtracks in the Commodore 64. I mentioned earlier that we had a ZX Spectrum at home, but when I was a bit older, I bought a couple of C64s just to enjoy those sounds. The SID chip getting a thorough workout. Some great soundtracks.
In fact, it's birthed its own genre. Sidway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely. It's a world that I don't really make music in too much myself. I mess around with trackers and stuff for fun, but I sure listen to a lot of it. Yeah, it's great.
Mhm.
It's great stuff. Cool people doing cool things. That makes the world go round.
No doubt, no doubt. So, how long did it take you to compose the soundtrack to Promise Mascot Agency?
Good question. It's quite a fairly large soundtrack for an indie game. There's about I did about 30 tracks for it, and there was another composer who worked on it as well, called Ryo Koike, who is amazing, who did another 10 tracks. So there's like 40 tracks on the soundtrack all in all. I was working on it over the course of a few years. Can't really remember exactly. I tend to make music quite quickly, which is another reason why I kind of decided, well, this is something I can do, that I can turn stuff around quickly. But because there was quite a long lead time on it, it was in development for quite a few years. I had room to breathe, which was great. So there were some tracks on it that if I wanted to, I could take a couple of weeks over them, or others, if I could hammer it out in a couple of days and everything comes together, that's the dream. And sometimes that happens. In fact, I just did a track for another game I'm working on. I finished it this afternoon, and I think I started it yesterday morning, which was amazing, getting something done in 2 days. And when you get into a flow state like that, it's great. I sat up till I think 2 a.m. last night working on it. And I don't mind working late when I'm kind of in the zone and stuff. So the short answer is it kind of varies. It's nice to have room to breathe, and if something requires a few weeks to work on, or potentially even longer, that's great if there's time to do it. But very often that's not the case. I have to work quicker than that a lot of the time, and that's not a problem either. But it is dreamy when you kind of when something just works from the get go, and you're kind of you're done in a couple of days. And they're the tracks that sort of sometimes I find are my favorite ones afterwards. Maybe because I haven't listened to them like 5 billion times before I send it off.
We've heard that before. Like,
Yeah,
not just with music either.
yeah. I guess
Like-
it sort of transcends all creative forms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you've been working on a thing for a number of years, you will get familiar with it, let's say.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to still love something once it's finished. It's nice to finish a thing and not be fed up with it. That's always a good goal.
Yep. Not something we have a whole lot of experience because, while we've been doing the show overall for a long time, every episode is done, in an hour or 2 hours or however long.
Yeah, exactly. You can forget about me as soon as I'm out of your ears.
I will admit that it has happened with some guests at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's understandable. Don't worry.
Anyway, so do you work the same style for the other games that you've worked on so far?
Mostly not. I mean, I mentioned I'm kind of shrouded in NDAs for a lot of it, but I can certainly talk about the styles that I'm working in. I mean, one of the games that I'm working on skews a bit more horror kind of direction, and that's great. I love horror games, and I love horror movies. I watch a lot of horror movies. I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to horror games. I was playing I was playing Silent Hill F on a train going to like a industry convention thing a few weeks back, and I accidentally got jump scared and screamed on the train, which was very embarrassing. So yes, it was nice to do something that's quite different, that skews a bit more creepy. And then another game I'm working on at the moment is the total opposite. It's very cute. It's kind of it's sort of board game inspired. It's got little sort of it's got kind of wooden pieces, and it's very beautiful and designed to look handmade. is very, very cute, the complete opposite. And I quite like that. Having kind of two polar opposite things to work on is good for my brain, I think, because if I've had enough of kind of ghosts and ghouls by lunchtime, I can take a break and do something cute and cuddly for a while in the afternoon, or the other way around. So I like having a bit of variety. And then there is some other stuff that I'm working on, which has been kind of similar, sort of jazz fusiony, city pop, like vaporwave kind of stuff going on, which always feels like home to me. So that's nice to have bubbling away in the background too. And I think I'm going to be doing some fantasy stuff later in the year as well, which will be kind of new for me. I've made a lot of fantasy music just for fun, but I haven't worked on a fantasy game before, so that'll be a nice new challenge as well.
I'd imagine that's going to be very symphonic.
It will, yeah, it definitely will. I don't think it'll be fully massively orchestral. We're talking more kind of like lutes and flutes, tavern bands and stuff. But there might be a couple of big orchestral moments in it too. I sure would like it if there would be. I'm sure there'll be like a boss theme or something in there where I can go a bit harder and get a bit more symphonic, which I'll probably mostly do in my studio at home here. But if I have a good excuse to record with a large choir or something for some tavern sites, I'd be a happy man.
If somebody else is footing the bill for that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I haven't seen the budget breakdown yet, so I don't quite know how that'll work. But hey, if somebody wants to spring for some live hurdy-gurdy players or a couple of tavern choirsters, I'm all for it.
Getting the Hungarians involved.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's where the hurdy-gurdy comes from.
Fair.
Yeah, absolutely. A cool instrument, one that I don't have an actual hurdy-gurdy. I've got a good like software hurdy-gurdy, but I would quite like to have one sitting right here. I like being surrounded by instruments, and I like an excuse to buy a new one.
What other off-kilter instruments might you own?
So I've got quite a few here. A lot of them I picked up kind of when I was working on Promise Mascot Agency, and I mentioned there was lots of aside from the jazzy stuff, there was a lot of traditional Japanese instrumentation in there. So I've got a couple of shakuhachi, which is a Japanese bamboo flute. I've got a shinobue, which is another smaller bamboo flute. I've got the shamisen here. I've got a taishogodo, which is a Nagoya harp. Actually, the taishogodo I have is it's a really strange instrument. It's a synthesizer. It's a synthesizer taishogodo, so it has real strings that you pluck, but it's kind of built around sampled sounds. So it can make kind of ostensibly traditional sounding kodo music, but it's also got these weird choir samples and stuff like that on it. I'm a big synthesizer guy in general. I'm sitting right beside a big rack of beautiful kind of a lot of 90s synthesizers here, some nice Roland ones and stuff like that. I still play a lot of guitar as well. I play a bit of sax too. But in terms of the more unusual instruments, they're usually kind of weird old synthesizers or ancient Japanese instruments make up a lot of the collection. And I've got drawers full of just odds and ends. Like I've got a couple of old bosun's whistles that I was using on a kind of a nautical themed track the other day, which was good fun, which I borrowed off my dad. So I'll probably have to return the bosun's whistles at some point, so we can go and blow them in the garden or whatever he wants to do with them.
Oh, that sounds very neat.
Yeah, it's fun. It's nice being able to have fun, and that's something that's really important to me because, this is my job now, but it was my hobby first. So I'll make music all day for work, and then I'll have my dinner, and then make more music just for myself for fun, and that's kind of important to me. And something that keeps it fun is trying new instruments and picking up new skills, and every day is a school day.
Well, I mean, and that brings me to this, which could be a tricky question. What do you think your limitations are musically at this point in time?
Oh, well, one of them is something that I mentioned already, which is the shakuhachi, which I've recorded with extensively. I'm not bad, not to toot my own flute, pun absolutely intended. I'm generally relatively decent at picking up picking up new musical instruments. The shakuhachi, I thought, yeah, this is an instrument. I've listened to loads of shakuhachi music. I've tons of records of solo shakuhachi improvisations and traditional music. I thought I can do this. I couldn't get a sound out of this thing for like a month or something. And even now, even when I pick it up, I'll usually have to
That's
record
that
quite a
really
few
long,
takes.
like bamboo woodwind thing that the guys
That
who
is
wear baskets over their heads play, right?
that is absolutely it. Yeah, the monks of nothingness, as they were called.
Was the
Which sounds
basket
very cool.
included?
The shop that I got it imported from a shop in Ikebukuro, and they were selling the masks, and I was tempted, but I couldn't quite justify it.
No, that's fair.
But yeah, it's a hard instrument, but was something I was reading a lot about. I was getting kind of frustrated, and I was reading a lot of old shakuhachi books by esteemed shakuhachi masters, and the overwhelming advice is not to get frustrated, and if you can't get a sound out of it, just enjoy the sound of kind of air rushing through this thing, and walk around the house and breathe when you're playing it. And I end up really loving the sound of this thing not working. And for a couple of tracks in Promise Mascot Agency, I actually used the sound of me not being able to play it just as a kind of background tone underneath, and it worked really well. So that was a nice way to take a negative and turn it into a positive. In terms of other limitations, I mean, things crop up all the time. As I mentioned, I relish the chance to take on new challenges, both in terms of work and in just having fun. So there's something great about finding something you can't do, because it just means you can learn to do it, or you can try your best to learn to do it. A lot of my time is spent kind of recording videos of my process and stuff to stick on the internet, on social media and stuff. And I'm always trying to find new fun ways to do that. And I'm rubbish when it comes to like stuff like Blender and 3D modeling, but I don't want to be rubbish at it. So I'm trying to learn it so that I can make nicer visuals to go alongside some of my music and stuff. So yeah, I mean, everyone's got limitations, and especially working in games, you know, new challenges will arise, on a almost daily basis. So it's just about learning how to overcome them or bypass them or do whatever needs to be done to make a cool thing and survive.
Indeed. And, well, I suppose since this particular thing is the talk of the town, it's worth getting into. What's your stance on AI in music?
Not a fan, as you might have guessed. Yeah, I think it sucks. It's something that doesn't. It's something I don't really think about that much in terms of like my own stuff. It doesn't. I'm not worried, because I tend to work in the indie realm, where arguably more than sort of AAA, even AA, human creativity is really celebrated, I think, in that world. And I'm very happy working in the indie realm. I've worked for in my previous life, I've worked for sort of major corporations and stuff before. I love being a part of like a small creative team. And something which I've been really happy to see is in almost all the contracts I've signed in the past year, I think maybe all, if not all of them, most of them have had like a clause in there saying, we promise that none of us are going to use AI in any capacity here. And that's great. I'm always so happy to see that. Because it's cool. It means that everyone's on the same page. It means you're working with quite literally real ones. You've got real people making real creative choices, and again, that's where cool mistakes come from as well as human creativity. There's not just obviously there's conceiving an idea and making it real, and that is awesome. But finding new avenues to go down along the way, or making a mistake and going, what, that mistake was actually awesome. That's stuff that is so human, and I love that. And without that, it's just nothing for me. It's just vapor, and not in a cool vaporwave way. It's just vaporous. There's no appeal. There's no appeal to me when something lacks that humanity. So yeah, AI, it sucks. And I hope it goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely with you there. I mean, I wish wasn't, how do I put this, infesting the
That's a good
no,
word.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, the not just video game industry, but the music industry, all of the industries.
Mhm.
And it's not just on the AAA scene. We've certainly had our encounters with AI, both people who have used it for various functions, or in games we've gotten, sometimes not disclosed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had to
Yeah.
call a few people out because they didn't do the proper disclosure thing, and that can get you
Yeah.
banned on Steam.
Yeah. I've seen it happen. Yeah, it's always disappointing when people do that, especially when it's not disclosed and there's an element of kind of trickery or pulling the wool over your eyes there.
Hmm.
It leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
It does. It does. There was certainly some back and forth on that one game.
Hmm.
Anyway, but hopefully, they keep saying this is inevitable. Just like the blockchain was inevitable, just like
Yeah.
NFTs were inevitable, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, how's your NFT fortune doing for you, buddy?
I think the annoying thing about it in music is because music has a lot of math in it.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
theoretically easy to algorithmically create something that sounds like music.
Yes,
But the
exactly.
entire point is to express something, and a computer can't express things.
That is exactly it in a nutshell. That is my problem with it, summed up right there. And something that also I find kind of disappointing is that I've seen musicians who I know were making their own music, but they'll use a crappy AI pick for the album art, and it's just like why would you do that? There's so many reasons not to do it. Aside from the moral reasons, it looks awful. I'd sooner
Hmm.
see like genuinely, I would rather see like a phone picture or like a crayon drawing. I've
Yeah.
seen albums with crayon drawings and they look great. I mean, there are so many options out there which are cooler. They look better and they're more fun to do. And having fun counts for a lot, I think, and injecting fun and creativity into something. And as you said, like intention, it's just a shame. But hey, I feel like every day at the minute I'm seeing news about like new data centers not being made or closing down or something, and that's
Hmm.
great. That puts a spring in my step.
Sora's dead.
I mean,
Woo! Just,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
great. That was a good day.
Yeah. In fact, I just came across this. Microsoft's removing unnecessary "quote unquote" Copilot buttons from Windows 11 apps.
yay! Like
Yeah,
paint.
This shit isn't. This shit is not inevitable.
exactly. It's not inevitable, and that I think the fact that is being hammered home so hard, I think that itself is very telling. That if it is inevitable, they shouldn't need to try and convince us so hard that it's inevitable. It's simply not.
Yeah, very insecure the messaging is. Like,
Yes.
like anyway. So, without breaking NDAs, what other games are you working on that you can name?
Let me think. There's one I'm doing at the minute called Travel Pack, which is good fun because it's made right here. I'm in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and almost all of the time I'm working with people further away, whether it's further away but not that far, like London or something, or if I'm working with people in the US, and I've worked with some Japanese colleagues and stuff. This is a game that's being made right here in my hometown. It's the one I mentioned earlier, which is kind of board game based. The lead dev behind it, Benjamin Donahue, is he comes from kind of like a kids animation background, so that feeds into this world a lot, and it's really cool. It's absolutely a cozy game. It's a comfort game. It's not a difficult game, but it's a satisfying one. It's, as I say, it's board game based. It's got these beautiful kind of lovely, immaculately designed kind of game pieces within it and stuff. And it's a well designed board game too. I don't know if you play board games. I used to play a lot of them. I don't so much anymore because I've got a young kid now. So it's kind of difficult getting out to friends' houses to play games. So it's nice to on a personal level to be working on a game that I know will satisfy that itch for me, that I can bring the Steam Deck to bed and cozy up and play some cool board game stuff. I think that's the only one that I'm legally allowed to really talk about at the minute, because the rest of them are NDA'd up to the hilt. But I will have announcements this year. Oh, I can tell you who I'm working with actually. Polygon Treehouse, who did Mythwrecked and Rookie, the kind of adventure narrative-driven games. I'm allowed to tell you that I'm the composer on their next game. I just can't tell you anything about the game itself.
Fair enough.
But they're a really cool company, and I love the previous games to bits. Mythwrecked is this kind of it's kind of inspired by Greek myths and legends and stuff, which is something I was really obsessed with as a kid and still am. Rookie is this kind of almost fairy tale leaning adventure. They've been absolutely brilliant to work with, and I'm so happy to be working on the next title. I can't wait to be able to talk about it more because it's deeply exciting. And it's always cool when I get to work on a game that I know, even if I had no involvement in it, I would love this game. And that definitely massively ticks that box. I would be buying it day one, even if I was nothing to do with it. So 100% check out Polygon Treehouse and keep an eye on their internets for upcoming announcements.
Ooh, sounds good. Sounds good. And we look forward to the time when you are able to talk about your next project.
Yeah, I'm a very verbose guy. It's hard to get me to shut up. So as soon as I'm allowed to talk about it, I won't stop talking about it. Promise Mascot Agency is out for, as I said, a year today. I still talk about it all the time because I just love it. It's a killer game. So yeah, as soon as I can talk about things, I will not stop talking about them.
And we'll have to have you back on the program when that happens.
Oh, I would be delighted. It would be my honor.
Indeed. Right. So I'll see if my colleagues here have anything final for you.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Listen, thanks so much for talking to me. It's a real treat for me getting to talk about what I do. So yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been really lovely getting to chat with you.
Yeah, it was lovely having you on the program. Excellent conversation. Right. So game is Promise Mascot Agency. It's out now on Steam. Is it out on consoles yet?
Yeah, it is. It's on the whole. It's on them all. It's on everything. And there's a lovely physical release coming out too. If you like a tangible game you can hold in your hands. There's actually two physical releases. There's the normal one coming out for PS5 and Switch, but also I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Lost in Cult. They make these gorgeous kind of essentially the Criterion edition for games of these lovely kind of physical editions, which come with all sorts of bits and pieces like extra artwork and all kinds of stuff. There's going to be a lovely Promise Mascot Agency Lost in Cult edition. They're a really cool company with amazing people on board. So I'm looking forward to having a nice. I like a tangible box in my hand, so that'll be cool too.
We're familiar with a couple of companies like that, but not that one. I'll look them up.
Yeah, give them run your eye across them. They're making cool things.
Okay. All right then. So that'll about do it for another installment of Fragments of Silicon. As always, be sure to tune in for the Sunday reviews, and until then, I shall wish you good gaming.